Matthew Superstars, it's Mrs. R. And I've been thinking about what we should read next. At Matthew's, there are so many of these Eerie Elementary books, and the first one is called The School is Alive. And I've got to tell you, your fellow students here that come in person, they absolutely adore Eerie Elementary. And I thought it would be fun. We've read a number of books where like animals come to life, and it just seems so very popular for second grade. I thought it'd be fun to read something where there's a little bit of a creepy factor, but it's also very silly. And this series comes to mind. It is written by Jack Chabert, and it's also heavily featured in every Scholastic book fair. So let's take a look and see what it's all about. The School is Alive, and there are some illustrations. It is a chapter book. It looks like it has 15 chapters. Chapter 1, It Begins. "This is horrible," said Sam Graves. He was holding up a shiny orange sash. "I can't believe I have to wear this." It was Monday morning, and Sam and his best friends, Antonio and Lucy, were standing in front of their lockers. They were waiting for the bell to ring. "Wait, you're a hall monitor?" Antonio said. "I didn't even know Eerie Elementary had hall monitors." Sam kicked at the floor. "They do now, and it stinks. The principal called my mom last night and said I had been chosen. Ugh, it's going to be terrible. I have to stand in the hallway and yell, 'Get to class,' and no skateboarding," because that's what hall monitors do. They make sure that you get to class on time. "Well, at least you get to wear that cool orange sash," Lucy teased. Sam stuck out his tongue. "Ring! Come on, that's the bell," Antonio said. Sam frowned. "You guys go ahead. I have to make sure everyone has gone into class." "We'll see you inside," Lucy shouted. Within moments, the hallway was totally empty except for Sam. He began walking the hall. Sam looked through the double doors to the outside. He saw a classmate by the playground. "Hey, Brian," Sam called out. "The bell rang. You should, get to class." Brian frowned at Sam. Then he ran past him into the school. "See, everyone hates the hall monitor," thought Sam. He was about to close the door when a cold breeze blew past. He saw that Brian had dropped his hat near the playground. "My teacher won't mind if I sneak outside for a second," thought Sam. The air outside was like ice. Orange and red leaves whipped across the ground. Sam shoved his hands into his pocket. He could see his breath. It looked like ghosts were dancing through the air in front of him. Have you ever breathed? It gets cold in the morning now. When you breathe out your warm breath, right? You can see it kind of blow out. And to me, it looks like smoke coming out, but it could look like ghosts. Sam looked up at the school building. He thought it looked like an old castle made of crumbling red brick. The paint on the door and the windows was chipped. Big black crows sat on the roof watching Sam. The whole thing gave him the willies. Sam didn't want to be out there any longer than he had to. He ran over to the playground. He was near the swings when something grabbed his ankle. Sam looked down. His feet were sinking into the sand. Now, of course, feet do sink into sand, but not like this. Something was pulling him under. "Help!" Sam shouted. The sand was up above his sneakers. He reached down to try to pull his feet free. The sand was wet. Quicksand? This was just like the quicksand from the old Tarzan movies. Sam's dad made him watch, but Sam was pretty sure that the quicksand was found in jungles in the movies, not on real-life playgrounds. "Help! The playground is eating me!" Sam shouted. The sand was up to his knees now. Sam fought and kicked. He watched as Brian's hat was swallowed up by the sand. It was no use. The cold, wet sand was up to his waist. Sam squeezed his eyes shut as he was pulled down deeper and deeper. Chapter 2. Mr. Nakobe. Just as the quicksand was about to swallow Sam, a hand grabbed his wrist. His eyes shot open. It was Mr. Nakobe, the old man who took care of the school. Mr. Nakobe tugged. Sam was yanked free. Sam gasped for air. "The playground sand," Sam said. "It just tried to eat me." Mr. Nakobe slowly got to his feet. He was out of breath, too. His face looked like a piece of paper that someone had balled up and then tried to flatten again. He stared at Sam. His eyes were small and gray. A chill went up Sam's spine. Mr. Nakobe growled, "You should be more careful, or you won't last long as hall monitor, Sam Graves." "Be careful of what?" "Be careful because other parts of the school might try to eat me," Sam said. Then he paused. "Wait, what does my being the hall monitor have to do with this? And why do you care if I stay on as hall monitor or not?" Mr. Nakobe began walking away. Over his shoulder he said, "Because I'm the one who chose you." "What does that mean?" Sam asked. But Mr. Nakobe didn't answer. He simply turned the corner out of sight. Sam shook his head, thinking, "This has been the weirdest day of my life, and it's only 8:30 in the morning." He needed to tell Lucy and Antonio about the quicksand and about creepy Mr. Nakobe, but first he had to ditch the orange sash. Sam darted inside and flung open his locker. Whoa! He stumbled back and threw his hand over his nose. His locker stunk. The smell coming out of Sam's locker reminded him of rotten chocolate milk or something. "Yikes, what did I leave in here?" he asked. Sam shoved the sash inside his locker. Then he knew what it smelled like. Really bad breath. Tick-tock, tick-tock, Chapter 3. Sam slammed his locker shut. He rushed into Miss Grinker's classroom. Miss Grinker was short and thin, with frizzy gray hair. She was listing everyone's parts for Friday's class play on the board. Sam slid into his desk between Antonio and Lucy. "Guys, the freakiest thing just happened. I got trapped in quicksand on the playground." Lucy scrunched up her forehead. Antonio scratched his chin. Then they both tried to laugh. "If it happened to you," Sam whispered, "you wouldn't be laughing." "Sam, Lucy, Antonio," yelled Miss Grinker. All three kids faced front. "Please pay attention," Miss Grinker said. "I'm still giving out the parts for Peter Pan." "I'm playing Peter Pan," Antonio whispered to Sam. He had a big smile on his face. He always did. He was the happiest kid Sam knew. "And I'm playing Wendy," Lucy whispered. "Sam Graves, you'll be playing Noodler. He's one of Captain Hook's friendly pirates," said Miss Grinker. Sam nodded, but all he could think about was the man-eating playground. As the day wound down, Sam stared out the window. An old oak tree was blowing in the breeze. It was moving strangely. Sam leaned forward on his desk. The tree looked like a giant oak hand waving at Sam. Sam shivered. Then he looked at the clock across the room. "How long until this day is over?" he thought. Sam could hear the clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. "How can I hear the clock from all the way over here?" he wondered. Then the sound of the clock changed. Sam no longer heard tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound became ba-bump, ba-bump. Sam was even more confused. "That doesn't sound like a normal clock, but I do know that sound. Ba-bump, 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 ba-bump." It sounded like a beating heart. Something Awakens, Chapter 4. Sam covered his ears, but he couldn't get away from the sound of the clock, not until ring! The day was over. Sam followed the other kids into the hall. He grabbed the hall monitor's sash from his stinky locker. "See you tomorrow, Sam," Lucy said. She and Antonio threw their backpacks over their shoulders and ran outside. Sam sighed. He wanted to run home, too. He wanted to plop down on the couch and fall asleep. Then he wanted to wake up to learn this whole day had been a terrible nightmare. But instead, he had to go on hall monitor duty. Sam stood near the third-grade lockers. The only thing keeping Sam awake was the cool chill across his neck. It felt like the school was breathing on him. Sam saw that he was beneath an air vent. Brrr! There were no teachers around, so Sam thought there would be no harm in sitting down. He slipped into a chair just outside the principal's office. "I'll only rest here for a minute." But soon Sam's eyelids felt heavy. They were closing. Sam was falling asleep. When Sam woke up, he was beyond confused. The halls were dark, nearly pitch black. "What time is it?" he wondered, standing up. Sam rubbed his eyes. He ran to the end of the hall. He peered through the big double doors. It was black as midnight outside. "How long was I asleep? My mom is going to freak out," thought Sam. "I have to get home now." He yanked on the doors, but they were locked. "Hello," Sam whispered. "Is anyone here? I fell asleep," and clang, clang, clang. Sam spun around. All of the locker doors flung open, one after the other, all the way down the hall. Sam jumped back. His heart was pounding. Clang, clang, clang. All the locker doors slammed shut again. Sam was really hoping this was a nightmare. He spun back around. He tugged as hard as he could on the doors, but it was no use. He was trapped inside Eerie Elementary. I think we'll stop there. We're on chapter 5. It's called The Skeleton. What do you guys think so far? Thumbs up, meh thumb, or big old thumbs down? I think it's kind of a thumbs up book, but if I were you, I would wait until we got a little further along before deciding. But I like the setting. That's the place where the story takes place, right? We learned a lot about Eerie Elementary. Just the name, Eerie. It's another word for spooky, you guys. I will see you next week with another few chapters from this book. The school is alive. Is it really? I hope you're having a great week, superstars, and I'll see you next week. Bye!